In the autumn of 1347, the Mediterranean breeze brought more than just the scent of salt and spice to the Sicilian shores. It carried whispers of death. Unassuming ships, heavy with plague, arrived at the port, their hulls infested with rats and fleas, carriers of an unseen curse. The island's once bustling market fell silent. Towns withered under a relentless pestilence that spread through the air and touch. Life unraveled before the bewildered people, like a tapestry torn by invisible hands. The Black Death had arrived, poised to forever change Europe's fate. Join me in the shadowed ports of 1347, where history shifted silently. In the haze of Sicilian autumn, a new chapter unfolded, a tale of destiny woven by unforeseen hands. Amid the busy docks of Messina, Genoese trading ships brought Byzantine silks, spices, and a silent calamity. Unseen among the cargo were rats carrying fleas, merchants of doom that would reshape Europe. As the ships docked, a silent menace bloomed. Sailors fell ill, marked as the plague's first victims, not by war, but by the bite of a flea. Chaos spread as they disembarked, unknowingly carrying the plague through touch and breath, turning vibrant homes into scenes of death. The plague whispered like a rumor at dusk, silently altering life without warning. Market squares grew quiet, towns turned into mourning grounds, church bells tolling in the winter chill. People sought answers in divine anger, superstitions, and fear of curses. Life unraveled, routines swallowed by dread, uncertainty thickening the air. Streets emptied, life's rituals crumbled, and joyous gatherings became too risky to bear. Amidst the chaos, people turned to the supernatural, seeking meaning in a world gripped by devastation. A foreboding silence replaced the once bustling marketplaces, now overshadowed by the grip of fear. Isolation within homes serves as a fragile shield against the relentless spread of the plague. In response to desperation, various measures emerge, a mix of profound efforts and futile attempts. Citizens walk through the streets believing that scents can protect them from the disease. Physicians adhere to traditional practices of bleeding and purging, while communities strictly enforce quarantines. Amidst this atmosphere, fearful individuals participate in desperate processions to offer themselves in despair. Meanwhile, the true carriers of chaos, rats and fleas, move unnoticed through the city. These pests, hidden within the urban landscape, embody a silent but grave threat. Rats hitch rides on ships, introducing the disease into towns where they mingle unseen among humans. Fleas jump from rats to humans, transmitting the deadly infection through simple bites. This intricate dance between fleas, rats, and humans unfolds as a destructive ballet invisible to medieval eyes. Death, impartial and indifferent, knows no social distinctions as it reaches both the wealthy nobility and the impoverished peasants. Nobles' feasts lose their splendor as fear looms, while titles offer no protection from the plague's reach. Peasants find no comfort in their humble dwellings, as fate blurs the line between caregiver and victim, enforcing equality through shared suffering. As towns fall to the disease, a palpable stillness descends, with empty streets and deserted squares haunting the memories of those who once inhabited them. The stench of decay lingers in the air, echoing absence more loudly than any sound. Whispers carried by the wind through silent facades seal the towns in ghostly quiet, mourning the loss of community. In these quiet voids, the weight of loss is etched into the landscape, a solemn tribute to the vanished vibrancy of the past. Amidst the silence, some seek knowledge as a beacon against the encroaching despair. Surviving monks and scholars, bearers of fading wisdom, strive to document the chaos in dusty tomes, bridging the gap between despair and understanding. Despite moments of uncertainty, caught between hope and resignation, the pursuit of knowledge continues as a resistance against the overwhelming darkness. As the plague's hold weakens, the aftermath reveals not just remnants, but a glimmer of renewal. Though shrouded in grief, survivors sow seeds of resilience, paving the way for a future unburdened by history's harsh lessons. The shadows of death give way to a tentative awakening, as life reimagined by loss shines with potential. With the grim lessons of death in mind, exploration and innovation flourish. Europe cautiously moves towards the dawn of the Renaissance, crafting a new narrative from the ruins of the old world. In medieval Europe, urban centers unwittingly became battlegrounds for disaster, with the Black Death finding an ideal environment in these densely populated areas. In bustling city environments, where people lived in close quarters, narrow alleyways and vibrant markets were filled with merchants selling their goods, unknowingly spreading a swift and deadly contagion. Homes were crowded with families, personal space was a luxury, and hygiene was shockingly lacking by today's standards. This chaotic medieval city life, rich with the smells of livestock smoke and unwashed bodies, became a breeding ground for rats and fleas, carriers of the terrible disease. Residents went about their daily routines, oblivious to the invisible threat looming in the air they breathed. As life continued in its usual patterns, danger lurked beneath the surface, with citizens going about their work and shopping, unaware of the looming doom. Ignorant of germs, people attributed the outbreak to poison, curses from the heavens, or angry deities. When the death toll rose, fear drove desperate and often strange attempts to stop the spread. The once lively city streets fell silent as neighborhoods succumbed to the relentless advance of the plague, leaving a chilling emptiness. The overwhelmed medieval cities, already struggling with high populations, had no solutions for the overwhelming illness. Streets filled with open sewers overflowed, and piles of diseased bodies accumulated. Public services collapsed under the weight of the dead and dying, with tradesmen either falling ill or fleeing, leaving chaos in their wake. Social order broke down rapidly, with both the rich and the poor facing bleak prospects as once vibrant streets became eerie and deserted. Law enforcement weakened by disease and fleeing officials allowed lawlessness to reign as opportunists took advantage of the chaos. Fear eroded communal trust, leading to acts of betrayal among neighbors and the creation of scapegoats to blame for the crisis. Even well-intentioned medical practitioners and clergy found themselves powerless in the face of the unyielding disease. Physicians lacking effective treatments were sidelined, while folk healers attempted to provide remedies using homemade methods. Spiritual leaders, exhausted by the constant demand and death, the discovery of faith and rituals provided little solace in the face of an indifferent killer. Their traditional roles as sources of comfort began to fracture, leading to crises of faith among their followers when they were absent or ineffective. Social rituals, once integral to community life, such as weddings, feasts, funerals, and celebrations, dwindled under the suffocating impact of the plague. The sounds and sentiments that once filled public gatherings were stifled by fear, turning even joyous events somber or non-existent. Ceremonies at the community level, where alliances were forged over shared meals, came to a halt, leaving gaps in social calendars and isolating individuals in shared silence. Civil interactions diminished as the proximity was seen as a danger, making shared meals or visits too risky, shrouded in suspicion and fear. Economically, medieval commerce ground to a halt as merchants perished or remained cautiously at home, and ports resembling ghostly harbors closed due to quarantine measures. The once vibrant networks of trade and craftsmanship faltered, with artisans and apprentices succumbing without replacements, turning bustling marketplaces into eerie echoes of their former selves. The decline in economic activities forced survivors to engage in new negotiations, empowering laborers with leverage as employers struggled to fill critical vacancies. This unexpected shift in dynamics was both surprising and inevitable. Amidst all this turmoil, the rigid social hierarchy collapsed. Nobles, skilled traders, and common citizens alike experienced the leveling impact of a disease that disregarded status or wealth. Those who survived witnessed the dismantling of the feudal order, prompting a redefinition of social expectations and the blurring of class boundaries through innovative means. Gradually, these evolving aspirations rewove the societal fabric, a subtle process amidst immediate tragedy, yet relentless in its progression. Paradoxically, as cultural norms eroded, new forms of art, theater, and music emerged from the ruins, reflecting a collective effort to foster connection in unconventional ways. Despite the decay of traditional values, the resilient human spirit endured. Cities once devastated by the plague embodied resilience, giving rise to new interpretations of life and communal structures in the wake of destruction. A phoenix-like rebirth amidst the ashes of devastation. This defiance of the plague's dominion over history's narrative marked the aftermath of the Black Death in Europe, where the toll exacted was more severe than anyone had foreseen. Once thriving towns now stood silent and unrecognizable, with empty streets painting a bleak picture of a society transformed. Historians estimate that between 30 and 60% of Europe's population perished, with some regions experiencing mortality rates as high as 80%. Entire villages were wiped out, their inhabitants not just disappearing from maps, but from living memory as well. The staggering numbers failed to fully capture the profound human tragedy, overwhelming local chroniclers who struggled to record the enormity of the devastation. Death ravaged the continent, leaving behind deserted fields and crumbling structures that stood as silent reminders of once vibrant lives intertwined with the land. The impact of the plague was profound, halting the economic pulse of medieval Europe. Villages were disrupted, with fewer hands working the soil and fewer voices heard. This led to a vacuum where productivity dwindled, causing threats of food shortages and societal instability. The nation's wealth, deeply rooted in the labor and presence of its people, was hollowed out. The demographic collapse triggered shifts in social and economic practices that reverberated through generations. Communities that once flourished now stood as ghostly remnants of nature's relentless power, with abandoned homes bearing the weight of neglect and nobility returning to empty estates. Cities, once bustling centers of medieval life, transformed into pathways of death at a swift and horrifying pace. Narrow streets became conduits for the pestilence, affecting individuals from all walks of life. Social structures crumbled, mirroring the physical decay with social chaos. Leaders succumbed to disease, markets withered, and the vibrant city life unraveled as fear fractured bonds of kinship and friendship. Archaeological records today narrate stories of disruption, followed by a long and challenging recovery. The plague left not only physical spaces barren, but also redefined a world marked by absence. Empty homes, fewer familiar faces, and echoing memories in taverns and churches characterized the aftermath. Survivors faced a life devoid of the once vibrant community spirit, grappling with the search for meaning in a seemingly senseless world. Some turned to religious interpretations, viewing the plague as divine retribution or a test of faith. Religious radicalism emerged as communities sought solace in different beliefs or superstitions. The loss of generational knowledge led to a scramble for continuity in farming techniques and trade secrets, as mourning became introspective, questioning the essence of life. Fear and paranoia became pervasive, transforming once lively public spaces into tense and distrustful enclaves. Psychological isolation set in, prompting communities to grow wary of strangers and view every passerby as a potential threat. This collective trauma shaped new group dynamics, altering interactions and pushing survivors into their homes. Identities were reshaped by solidarity and survival during a time when concepts of belonging and community were transformed. The smell of death lingered alongside the disease, blending with the air. Cities were overwhelmed with the deceased, and carts moved through streets filled with decay. Despite efforts to mask the odor with fragrant herbs and oils, the stench persisted, serving as a grim reminder of mortality. Scholars later recounted cities defined by their smell, carrying stories of collective decay in the air. As the living struggled with logistics, the dead continued to pile up, pushing cities to their limits. Graveyards overflowed, and mass graves became common, challenging not just physically but emotionally. Each mass burial underscored the shortcomings of human institutions. The aftermath led to a reshaping of society, forever altering institutions in the face of overwhelming mortality. The Black Death spread relentlessly, crossing boundaries and mountains through ships, merchants, and roads. People's responses varied from desperation to adaptation, forging new unity amid chaos. Even in the face of destruction, hope endured, guiding communities towards resilience and renewal. These early challenges planted the seeds of change. Despite the devastation, memories endured, leaving a lasting mark on Europe's history. Old structures crumbled under pressure, but from the ruins emerged new ideas. The disasters that fractured society ultimately paved the way for the bright dawn of the Renaissance, showcasing human endurance and adaptability. The once towering medieval church, a beacon of hope and salvation in Europe, saw its facade crumble in the face of the Black Death. For centuries, the church had been a cornerstone of European life, offering solace and answers to life's mysteries. However, as the plague swept through towns, its promise of divine protection faltered. People turned to clergy for help, praying fervently and attending Mass in desperation. The Church, like its followers, was powerless in the face of the disease. Clergymen perished alongside their congregants, shaking the very foundations of faith. With its authority waning, the Church confronted an existential crisis. Unable to explain God's silence, people sought alternative narratives, disrupting the religious and social norms of medieval Europe. A strange phenomenon emerged as flagellants marched through towns, publicly whipping themselves in a bid to atone Christ's suffering and earning divine mercy. Their grim processions were mesmerizing and macabre, drawing crowds desperate for salvation. The Church, however, viewed them as a challenge to its authority, dismissing their rituals as bordering on heretical. Yet the flagellants' popularity revealed cracks in the Church's armor, signaling a shift towards personal piety over hierarchy. As these grassroots movements grew, the Church resorted to its formidable inquisitorial forces to suppress dissent and regain control. Mistrust and fear gave rise to numerous heretical whispers, each offering alternative explanations for the plague. Was it divine punishment, an apocalyptic omen, or the devil's work? These questions circulated through villages, sowing seeds of rebellion. Inquisitors efficiently targeted these gatherings, suppressing deviations from accepted doctrine. Public burnings and forced confessions starkly reminded everyone of the Church's desperation to quash doubts sprouting across Europe. In a world descending into chaos, communities sought scapegoats. Witch hunts erupted rapidly, targeting marginalized women such as healers and midwives as alleged conduits of malevolence. Accusations spread swiftly, and society vented its fears on these victims through harsh trials and executions. It was a distressing echo of the flagellant fervor, a misplaced catharsis trying to impose order on disorder. Meanwhile, Jewish communities also faced brutal persecution, scapegoated as supposed architects of the plague. Rumors accused them of well poisoning and demonic pacts. In the ensuing frenzy, entire villages were massacred or expelled. The Church's subdued response highlighted its waning influence, unable to suppress the basic instincts of its followers. This breakdown of authority infiltrated religious practices, unraveling rituals and traditions, with clergy succumbing as rapidly as laity. Sacramental rites were neglected, replaced by hurried burials in mass graves. Lay people assumed unexpected roles, transforming funerals into ceremonies influenced by paganism, unsettling church officials but meeting spiritual needs organically. This informal syncretism eroded the Church's foundational structure as faith adapted for survival. Amidst this decay, the miasma theory emerged, personifying the plague as foul air. The stench from the sick, sickeningly sweet and suffocating, seemed to validate divine wrath. However, this dread of miasma unintentionally fostered basic public health measures like avoiding tainted meats and purifying air with herbs. It was a subtle shift towards logic over dogma. Though slow to act, the Church eventually assumed a practical role, embracing rudimentary quarantine measures. Motivated by safeguarding sacred spaces from contamination, they imposed restrictions on gatherings. Paradoxically, these measures facilitated a connection between ecclesiastical concern and practical survival, ensuring communities endured amidst a challenging period. During the pestilential siege, surviving through hardship triggered a transformation in faith and creativity. Despite the devastation, new sacred works emerged that depicted the delicate balance between life and death. Artists and poets explored divine themes amidst human suffering, producing music and art that deeply resonated with a grieving society. These creations, bridging the gap between the divine and human experiences, helped communities cope with loss and find solace in tragedy. The flourishing of altarpieces, sculptures, and devotional art symbolized a newfound connection between earthly existence and spiritual aspirations. The temporal authority of the Pope faced challenges beyond Christendom during this tumultuous period. Pope Clement VI and others struggled to maintain stability in the face of social upheaval, foreseeing the impending disintegration of the Church. Messages encouraged clergy to support the suffering, while papal decrees increasingly focused on worldly matters. As the papal court sought to retain power and legitimacy by selling properties and demanding tithes urgently, the Church bore the scars of its diminished authority even after the plague subsided. The Black Death, a merciless reaper of lives, left Europe devastated, with towns and fields emptied and silent. Once thriving communities lay abandoned, their former vibrancy reduced to memories. Amidst the desolation, the scarcity of human life became alarmingly evident. Unlike the privileged nobles and clergy, common peasants found themselves in a newfound position of influence due to the shortage of labor. Empowered by their essential role in survival, peasants began to demand better wages, improved conditions, and the freedom to choose where they worked. The concept of free peasants, previously unimaginable, disrupted the feudal system that had long governed society. Communities, in need of labor to revive their towns, now courted workers, shifting traditional class dynamics. This economic transformation not only affected currency, but also laid the groundwork for a growing class consciousness among the working poor. The system of serfdom, which tightly bound peasants to their lords, started to crumble as the balance of power shifted in favor of the laborers. The devastation caused by the plague left estates and manors unguided, weakening the rigid hierarchies in medieval society. Seizing the opportunity, many serfs fled in search of freer lives in the growing towns and cities, where anonymity and opportunity were abundant. However, the new paths to freedom were not without conflicts. Landowners fought back with harsh tactics, trying to enforce old laws that bound serfs to their former tasks and wages. As communities disappeared over time, enforcement faltered. With labor becoming a scarce and valuable commodity, negotiation became a vital skill. Landlords faced a surreal scenario of fields left unsown due to a lack of willing hands without fair compensation. Peasants began demanding more than mere survival rations, seeking wages paid in coin and conditions that reflected respect rather than duty. This shift marked a revolutionary change in medieval society, with peasant labor becoming highly sought after. As cities recovered from the plague, they attracted waves of rural laborers and former serfs looking for new opportunities. The urban environment offered the promise of mastering trades and exploring new skills, allowing peasants to break free from old constraints and take on roles as craftsmen, traders, or citizens. The blurring of class distinctions opened up new possibilities for a future focused on potential rather than mere survival. In this transformed world, women found themselves taking on roles traditionally held by men. The void left by the plague in both population and societal roles led to women managing estates and family businesses in the absence of their husbands or brothers. This gradual shift not only stemmed from necessity, but also led to a greater acceptance of women's capabilities in society. While patriarchal structures remained strong, women began carving out spaces for themselves in industries such as textiles and brewing, as guilds opened their doors to female members. The rural economy, once heavily reliant on traditional serfdom, had to adapt quickly to survive. Villages with decimated populations turned to tenant farming and sharecropping as viable alternatives, gradually embracing elements of capitalism. As society underwent restructuring, education and new economic opportunities began to emerge, setting the stage for further societal changes in the future. The exclusive domain of nobility and clergy began to shift into the hands of commoners as a result of a labor crisis that sparked an interest in literacy and numeracy in growing markets. Basic schools and apprenticeships were cautiously established by merchants and guilds in need of skilled labor. Despite resistance from those in power, the gradual spread of basic education laid the groundwork for a more informed and empowered populace, setting the stage for future enlightenment. During times of societal upheaval, folk leaders emerged from the ranks of those who had survived the plague, resonating with communities and voicing desires for change. These leaders united fragmented groups to negotiate for fair treatment and laws, shaping the evolution of Europe in the aftermath of the Black Death. While the rise of the poor presented new opportunities, it also brought hidden costs and struggles. Landowners sought to regain control and exploited laborers caught between newfound freedoms and subtle manipulation. Despite challenges, these shifting dynamics hinted at the potential for systemic change and future revolutions. The post-plague world saw social structures transform, with seeds of societal change sprouting from the aftermath of desolation and survival. survivors found themselves in a changed world, where labor became valuable and demands for change grew stronger among the living. In the aftermath of the Black Death, society's foundation was shaken, challenging the long-standing hierarchy dominated by feudal lords. The surviving peasants began to realize their newfound power and cautiously started to demand change, signaling a shift in the old order. In England, the year 1381 marked a turning point where the tide of change began to rise, as the seeds of revolt planted by the plague started to take root and challenge the established societal norms. As the peasants rebelled, villages that were once filled with despair now vibrated with defiance, led by figures such as Wat Tyler. The uprising was fueled by anger over oppressive taxes and a rigid system, going beyond mere economic desperation to become a resolute cry for justice. The attempt to control the rising class through the Statute of Laborers, which froze wages, only fueled more fury. Villages turned into rebellious forces marching towards London, their demands resonating like thunder across the countryside. Although the revolt was brutally crushed and its leaders silenced, the audacity of the attempt left a lasting impact on England's conscience. Meanwhile, across the Channel, France also faced its own uprising. In 1358, the Jacquerie erupted as war-weary and heavily taxed peasants revolted against a detached nobility. This spontaneous rebellion tore through the French countryside, revealing the suppressed anger of the peasants and unsettling the nobility on their thrones, even though it was violently suppressed. Despite being swiftly crushed, these revolts highlighted a common yearning for dignity and a shared desperation among the people, transcending borders and resonating across Europe. While each revolt had its own local issues, they were all bound together by the universal experience of suffering exacerbated by the plague. Though many uprisings were quelled through forceful repression, they compelled lords and kings to reconsider their treatment of the people they had long neglected. Charismatic leaders like Tyler and Guamcale emerged as symbols of resistance, inspiring the oppressed towards a common cause, yet facing harsh repression that served as a stark reminder of the risks involved. The legacies of these leaders endured, prompting reflection and questioning even among those who had conquered them. The memory of rebellion, despite efforts to erase it through brutality, lingered and paved the way for future unrest and reform over the years. The communities, bound by feudal constraints, found seeds of change carried by the wind of rebellion, sowing the ground for a potential shift in the future. Despite facing oversight and limited literacy, individuals still managed to share aspirations and coordinate through whispers, ballads, and secret gatherings in inns and churches. These practices established networks of defiance, connecting those marginalized by society. The oppressive regime may have suppressed the flames temporarily, but it could not extinguish the spirit of resistance. Women also played crucial roles, operating under the radar of recorded history. Despite being overlooked by patriarchal narratives, they organized, informed, and fueled the flames of change. Although their contributions were often unacknowledged, they formed the invisible bonds that held the rebellion together. These unsung heroines ensured that the legacy of uprising was not solely a story of male defiance, but a collective human endeavor. As the social order was disrupted, economic transformations began to unfold. Peasants and serfs, previously tied to the land, started seeking pathways to economic freedom in a changing world. The persistent impact of the plague weakened feudalism, paving the way for more flexible structures of class, wealth, and mobility. Calls for autonomy echoed throughout society. What began as whispers evolved into a promise of a new era, where tales of survival inspired dreams of dignity. As the narrative of revolt fades, one thing remains evident. The language of rebellion, born in times of crisis, transcends the mortality that sought to silence it. It stands as a testament to the unyielding will to rise, to speak out, and to reclaim. Let us reflect on these tales as the sun sets behind ancient walls, recognizing the courage of peasants who not only envisioned change, but demanded it. If these stories resonate with you, do not let them fade into obscurity. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned to Medieval Grime for more stories. A bit irreverent, always insightful. Until next time, gathered around the fire. Next. The Black Death's devastating impact left vast swaths of land desolate. As nobles and their heirs succumbed to the plague, the once unassailable feudal strongholds crumbled. Estates previously governed by complex feudal ties now lay abandoned, waiting to be claimed. This upheaval fueled the aspirations of those who had long labored as tenants. For generations, land symbolized wealth, power, and privilege. However, the plague reshaped the societal landscape, offering opportunities for social mobility previously unseen. In the twilight of feudalism, surviving serfs boldly seized newfound plots of land, reshaping their futures and altering Europe's terrain forever. Nature adapted to this human exodus, with once cultivated fields surrendering to the encroaching forests. This shift not only redefined ecological boundaries, but also prompted medieval farmers to innovate with new techniques. With more land available, the stage was set for agricultural experimentation, leading to greater crop diversity that influenced local markets and trading routes. This laid the early groundwork for a society transitioning from agrarian roots towards commerce and trade. During this transformation, once powerful monasteries, known for learning and spiritual guidance, were impacted by the plague. Monastic communities dwindled, their halls now empty of the solemn chants that once filled daily life. Many monasteries vanished, their lands taken over by secular rulers and traders, shifting power away from the church. The decentralization of land and wealth weakened ecclesiastical ties, allowing for a more diverse social fabric to emerge. The loss of monastic knowledge created gaps in education, but also led to the rise of secular universities, paving the way for the Renaissance. These changes brought uncertainty, but also opportunities for intellectual, cultural, and economic growth. The erasure of noble lines due to the plague led to disputes over titles and lands, creating new alliances and shifting allegiances across Europe. As dynasties crumbled, new families rose to power, weakening feudal ties and empowering central monarchies. Urban centers flourished, with artisans and merchants thriving, leading to the growth of a bold middle class advocating for civic liberties and political representation. As nature reclaimed forests and cities experienced a rebirth with reduced populations, urban migration brought new life and energy to towns. This migration fortified cities as hubs of innovation and cultural exchange, but also sowed seeds of future discord due to conflicts over wealth and land ownership among rival factions. The absence of legal frameworks led to further power struggles in Europe's future, highlighting the turbulent shifts in society during this transformative period. The sudden changes in governance led to power struggles as the growing middle classes started demanding a role in shaping societal policies to align with their interests. Trade routes expanded from bustling centers, laying the groundwork for future colonial endeavors. As proto-banking systems emerged alongside increased global trade, local economies became intertwined with a rising capitalist mindset. Craft guilds adapted old rules to create new opportunities, signaling the emergence of a proto-industrial social structure. This reshaped landscape positioned Europe on the brink of economic change, with feudal systems giving way to new economic activities and redistributed lands challenging rigid hierarchies. The aftermath of these changes set the stage for the Renaissance, Enlightenment, and future economic revolutions, quietly but steadily transforming Europe. The devastating impact of the Black Death left a profound silence, marking both destruction and potential. Once lively towns stood empty, creating an eerie stillness that hinted at transformation. In this silence, the seeds of rebuilding were sown, with survivors facing a new era, promising change and renewal in every aspect of life. The void left by the plague spurred creativity and innovation, as society shifted towards new ways of living. Forgotten pathways became avenues for reinvention and progress, offering opportunities to reshape the world. The redistribution of wealth after the plague, due to a significant loss of population, broke traditional hierarchies and concentrated riches in the hands of survivors. This newfound wealth, particularly in trade hubs like Florence and Venice, fueled a cultural renaissance with a focus on art, science, and innovation. The rise of financial independence allowed for social mobility, enabling the lower classes to negotiate wages and seek new opportunities beyond servitude. It was previously unimaginable. As these economic dynamics shifted, a ripple effect occurred, where the thirst for knowledge and cultural expression became tangible, spreading outward and inspiring change. The invention of the printing press around 1440 by Johannes Gutenberg revolutionized the spread of knowledge across Europe. Literacy, once confined to monasteries and the elite, expanded to include broader segments of society as books became more accessible. This democratization of information sparked a marketplace of ideas where discussions and debates thrived outside the confines of secluded halls. Villages and towns buzzed with intellectual curiosity, igniting the humanism that would characterize the Renaissance. Scholars eagerly turned to ancient texts in their quest for rediscovery. Renaissance humanism flourished by reviving dusty texts passed down through generations, bringing Greek and Roman philosophies back into the spotlight. Tales of antiquity found new relevance as survivors sought meaning in ancient wisdom. Previously lost or overlooked books now captivated thinkers eager to unravel historical mysteries and address contemporary issues. Artists became pivotal creators in this evolving cultural milieu, blending inspiration from antiquity with innovative techniques to produce groundbreaking works. Figures like Da Vinci, Michelangelo, and others bridge the past and present, depicting the human experience with a raw honesty, influenced by recent encounters with mortality. Art became a reflection of life itself, showcasing society's profound awareness of both beauty and impermanence. Concurrently, architects seized the opportunity to reimagine urban landscapes, designing cities that were both emptied and expanding. They envisioned streets characterized by beauty, order, and functionality. The aftermath of the plague presented a chance to create spaces that embodied a renewed civic spirit. New architectural methods and materials emerged, enabling the construction of buildings that symbolized resilience and hope, while also absorbing the echoes of a transformed population. Amid these physical and intellectual transformations, science emerged from the shadows of the plague. The crisis exposed the inadequacies of medieval medicine, prompting scholars to pursue a more grounded understanding of the human body. With taboos set aside, the practice of cadaver dissection became more widespread, shifting medicine from superstition to empirical investigation. The anatomical knowledge gained laid the foundation for medical advancements, signaling a transition towards scientific inquiry and discovery. As power and influence rebounded, political landscapes underwent a transformation. Traditional hierarchies crumbled, giving way to a patchwork of regional autonomy and negotiation. Monarchs and city-states found themselves readjusting, engaging with merchants and artisans who now held the power of their own. Florence, in particular, flourished as a center of wealth and creativity, driven by a fresh sense of civic pride and a more decentralized power structure. This transformation paved the way for political and artistic revolutions, fueling a dynamic societal framework. By challenging old beliefs, philosophers like Giovanni Pico dell'Andola forged new paths of contemplation, questioning the very essence of fate and divinity. The aftermath of the catastrophe prompted Europeans to explore human potential from different perspectives, shifting their focus from predetermined destinies to the empowerment of choice and agency. This philosophical change, accompanied by increasing skepticism, laid the foundation for the intellectual and scientific advancements that ensued. The aftermath of the Black Death serves as a powerful testament to the resilience of the human spirit and society. From the devastation left in the plague's wake emerged a vibrant Renaissance, an era marked by unparalleled creativity and revival. As old certainties crumbled, a new world emerged with a renewed thirst for exploration. The Renaissance, born out of despair, stands as a profound reminder of the enduring capacity for renewal and transformation, echoing throughout history with lessons of human potential and ingenuity. The Black Death inflicted a deep wound on the soul of Europe, reflected in the work of artists. The profound fear of death permeated their creations, turning art into a medium for contemplating the ever-present reality of mortality. The plague not only claimed lives, but also reshaped how life and its inevitable end were perceived. Artists captured this shift by portraying life as haunted by the shadow of death, creating dark and introspective works that served as poignant reminders of mortality. Out of this introspection arose the dance macabre, a potent symbol of the era's existential struggles. This artistic phenomenon depicted a macabre ensemble of kings, peasants, clerics, and soldiers engaged in a grim dance with death, conveying a universal message of death's impartiality, sparing no one regardless of their status. Whether depicted in murals, manuscripts, or plays, the dance macabre not only entertained but also exhorted the living to lead virtuous lives, as death was always looming. The skeletal figures in these artworks drew attention for their eerie yet whimsical nature, serving as stark reminders of life's impermanence. Alongside the dance macabre, memento mori emerged, whispering to each individual a sobering truth. Remember, you must die. Symbols like skulls, hourglasses, and wilting flowers became prevalent in art, symbolizing the fleeting nature of life and urging individuals to live fully yet reflectively. This was an era where art encouraged contemplation of existence and the afterlife, using symbols of memento mori to remind people of life's transience. The impact was profound, shaping how people approached each day and leaving a lasting mark on Europe's collective consciousness. Literature also took on a darker tone as writers infused the darkness they had witnessed into their works. Gone were the heroic tales of chivalry and romance, replaced by narratives intertwined with cynicism and loss. Giovanni Boccaccio's The Decameron stands as a testament to this shift, blending the horror of the plague with humor and insight. Such stories explored human resilience, exposing the absurd interplay between life and relentless death. Writers became both jesters and critics, challenging societal norms and pondering humanity's place in an unpredictable world. Simultaneously, visual art embraced the macabre, with skeletons frequently haunting scenes. These skeletal figures symbolized the blurred boundary between life and death, moving beyond mere terror to engage in a dialogue with the living. They prompted viewers to contemplate the ever-present shadow of mortality. Through their skeletal frames, these figures became silent storytellers, inviting audiences to reflect on life's fleeting moments and ethical implications. This artistic evolution highlighted how society grappled with its fears, seeking to bridge the gap between the tangible and the transcendent. As the church vied for influence in a post-plague era, artistic expressions of faith gained deeper complexity. Religious art became a platform for grappling with doubt, fear, and divine questioning. Saints were portrayed with more human emotions as artists endeavored to merge heavenly narratives with earthly struggles. This nuanced depiction resonated through compelling frescoes and solemn altarpieces, reflecting the broader effort to reconcile faith with the devastating toll of the plague. Funerary art also evolved in the shadow of the Black Death. Once serene tomb sculptures transformed into grim cadaver effigies, portraying death's inevitable reach. This stark visual representation was not an embrace of morbidity, but a contemplation of life's fragile brevity. These artworks urged society to acknowledge death's unifying force, serving as poignant reminders of humanity's earthly passage and blending societal reflections on life and decay into art's enduring narrative. Architecture emerged with its own story to tell in the aftermath. Gothic churches and civic buildings exuded a somberness, yet with an emerging Renaissance ambition. These structures symbolized resilience through stone and spire, offering silent testament to survival and echoing through time with whispers of collective grief. They narrated tales of mourning, but also of hope, aspiring upward as symbols of humanity's strength in a transformed world. Despite the challenges, the Black Death's shadow sparked a paradoxical fixation on luxury amid decay. Society's newfound obsession with wealth materialized in lavish textiles and extravagant displays. The opulent ceremonies and luxurious displays during the time of the plague served as more than just vanity. They were statements of identity and resilience in the face of uncertainty, turning society's grief into a defiant embrace of mortality. Through the art created in the aftermath of the plague, that era continues to bear witness to the delicate balance between life and death. Art became a silent guardian during a period marked by loss, yet driven by the desire to comprehend life's fragility. These artistic expressions transcend time, delving into the existential questions that arose from the devastation of the plague. Each brushstroke and chisel mark captured the eternal interplay of fear, hope, and the enduring human spirit. The Black Death had a profound impact on the feudal structure that had long been the backbone of Europe. Before the plague, rigid social hierarchies dictated life, with lords controlling the land and peasants toiling under their rule. However, as the plague ravaged communities, leaving land abandoned and laborers scarce, landlords were faced with a dilemma. They had to adapt their terms to retain workers or risk the collapse of their estates. Surviving serfs, realizing their newfound leverage, began to demand wages and improved conditions, leading to the gradual dismantling of the feudal system. This transformation was gradual but significant, lasting for decades. Some nobles held on to traditional practices, while others embraced change by offering land and freedom to attract workers. This shift laid the groundwork for the emergence of capitalism, as new markets opened up and trade opportunities expanded. Economic power shifted away from the land-based nobility, paving the way for wealth accumulation through trade and industry. This marked the end of the feudal era and the dawn of a new age. As feudalism declined, cities such as Florence, Venice, and Paris experienced a renaissance, reshaping Europe's political and cultural landscape. People migrated from rural areas to urban centers in search of stability, fueling growth in these cities. Merchants, artisans, and scholars, once on the fringes, now played central roles in urban governance and economies, transforming cities into vibrant hubs of commerce and innovation. This urban revival not only boosted economic prosperity but also challenged medieval power structures. In these city-states, new ideas flourished, paving the way for the blossoming of the Renaissance. Diverse backgrounds mingled, sparking innovation in art, science, and politics. City-states developed advanced systems of banking, governance, and education, becoming symbols of modernity. Their influence extended, laying the foundation for the cultural and intellectual renaissance that propelled Europe into the modern era. The plague also revealed the shortcomings of medieval medicine and raised doubts about religious explanations for disease. The desperation that arose from the devastation sparked an early era of scientific inquiry. Scholars and physicians, compelled by necessity, began to challenge long-held beliefs, laying the groundwork for a period of exploration and experimentation. In academic institutions, scholars rediscovered ancient texts, igniting a revival in medical science and fostering a growing skepticism towards traditional doctrines. This thirst for knowledge revolutionized Europe's perception of the world, with observation replacing superstition as the foundation of understanding. New tools and methodologies emerged, providing structured insights into the natural world. Ironically, the terror caused by the plague catalyzed a transformative period of thought, fueling scientific curiosity that would eventually lead to the Enlightenment. In the aftermath of the plague, Europe's trade routes underwent significant changes, reshaping economic practices and facilitating unprecedented connections between territories. While depopulation disrupted supply chains, it also created new opportunities. Merchants seized upon market gaps, establishing new trade routes and networks that extended beyond conventional boundaries. As Europe recovered, trade flourished, resulting in the exchange of diverse goods such as metals, textiles, spices, and silk, setting the stage for the age of exploration. This interwoven trade facilitated cultural exchanges, enabling the spread of ideas, technologies, and practices. Innovations in navigation, cartography, and seafaring paved the way for explorers like Columbus, ushering in a new era of global interaction that fundamentally reshaped societies on both sides of the Atlantic. Artists, grappling with the devastation wrought by the plague, redefined how themes of life and death were depicted. Depictions of skeletal figures and macabre motifs, reflecting shared trauma and stark realities, became prevalent in art. The rise of macabre themes extended beyond art to literature and music as society turned to creative expression for solace, addressing existential questions prompted by the pandemic. This contemplation on mortality coincided with a period of creative resurgence. Artistic narratives expanded to encompass classical themes as Europe revisited ancient texts. The prosperity of city-states enabled patronage, leading to the creation of iconic works by masters such as Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci. The plague spurred the evolution of art, blending somber with the sublime, morbid with magnificent, and embracing realism and exploration. The impact of the Black Death extended to religious life, challenging beliefs in a benevolent deity due to widespread suffering and indiscriminate death. As clergy members succumbed to the disease, the authority of the church declined. Disillusioned individuals sought solace in personal spirituality and alternative forms of expression, prompting a period of religious introspection and reform. This crisis sowed the seeds for the Reformation, as leaders reevaluated beliefs, hierarchical structures, and organizational purposes. In the wake of the plague, social bonds were strained as communities grappled with loss, leading to a reevaluation of priorities and the formation of new connections. Collaboration and cooperation transcended traditional boundaries, fostering a sense of shared humanity. The weakening of class barriers allowed peasants to negotiate better terms and reshape rigid social hierarchies. These new dynamics highlighted the value of individual contributions, sparking innovation and the spread of ideologies. Europe's societal changes promoted civic engagement and a sense of responsibility. The upheaval, driven by necessity, pushed society toward modern structures. As power centralized and governance evolved, the groundwork for the modern state was laid. Feudal territories evolved into defined nation-states with strong central governments capable of managing resources, enforcing laws, and providing support. This restructuring led to standardized taxation, bureaucratic administration, legal reforms, and the development of national identities. The shift from feudal allegiance to national identity based on culture and language set the stage for modern political entities. Despite the devastation caused by the Black Death, it inadvertently paved the way for growth, exploration, and innovation in Europe. Rather than crushing humanity, the plague highlighted resilience and the ability to reinvent. New paths were forged from medieval systems, resulting in profound transformations that extended beyond Europe's borders. The legacy of the Black Death, emerging from darkness, ultimately propelled Europe toward remarkable progress and uncharted futures.